So before we get started, this is going to be a very informal portion of this event, and that's on purpose. You're going to see a theme here is trying to recreate the miniature experiences that I've had as CEO over the past few years that started here in Meridian. This is very, very personal for me. Each one of these mayors has just really helped me understand the value in hometown service. Phenomenal story. I'll start with Mayor McAdams. I met Mayor McAdams summer to Greenwood, Mississippi, and we spent a few days there. Stoves, the gourmet stoves, Vikings in Greenwood. We did a cooking class there. We stayed at the revitalization that takes place. Constituents, and certainly beloved by us in Rail. And we really enjoyed working with Mayor Carolyn for some time. So I'm really glad to have her here, and we'll talk with the mayor about the existing service and what else we might be able to get going there. Mayor Ellis, at one of the long distance workshops, and Mayor Ellis has been a force getting the I-20 to compete for that I-20 corridor program. Marine entrepreneur, and he's bringing that spirit to Monroe, and it's doing really well, and rail is the next step. And then I have to say that Mayor Dan and I only met 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago. And ironically, it was at an airports conference. And we were talking about how to connect airports to other things. And we started talking about rail in Natchez. And he has some really terrific ideas about what we could be doing in Natchez. And I learned this about Mayor Gibson. He's actually been the mayor of 2 different places, which is pretty neat too. But he's done a phenomenal job as well. So I'm really excited for all of you to hear from him. And I thought that it'd be helpful to have John Robert here, not only because he led Amtrak, but because, like these mayors, he had a vision for rail in his community, and he has brought it forward. So I would like us to maybe kind of have this conversation about how we're going to make this work in these towns. So John Robert, I don't know if you want to start with the Meridian experience and push this off, or I'm happy to do it as well.
You know, Jim, you don't give a former mayor an opportunity to speak. Makes you want that fulfilled. But you have experienced the broad spectrum of investment that has come in Meridian, Mississippi by planting a flag in a dying downtown at Union Station. Okay. And we'll talk later today in our fireside chat about how each one of those projects developed over time. And they literally did all go back one way or the other to that train station. But what the train station said is, we're not giving up on the downtown. Our city sense of place is not carved out on the interstate at some fast food restaurant or service station. It's carved out in your downtown, where your story is told literally in the bones of the architectural fabric of your community. And if your community understands its past and is willing to deal with its present, then you can imagine the future. And that's what the investment in Union Station began for us. And I think it's interesting that we're hearing from existing service and how it can be better and what it can do to transform a small city in the South. And we're all small cities if you look around the country in comparison to the big metropolitan areas. Also how an extension of long distance is going to transform cities that haven't had passenger rail service in decades, yet aspired for it. And then you're also going to hear a story of a much shorter distance passenger rail that's really about tourism purely for a city that's rich in culture. One of the oldest cities, and at one time, one of the richest cities in this country. So they each have three incredibly important stories to tell, which are different, and they understand that rail is their front door for many people who will come to visit and be welcomed into their community.
So I think I would like to start with the I-20 corridor, if I might. We'll hand the microphone down there. So tell us a little bit about how you came to the I-20 corridor as a project and how you really came to sort of lead this effort among your fellow mayors.
Well, the first time... We good? Okay. The first time I was introduced to, well, it was the Southern Rail Commission right here in Meridian, Mississippi. And just like yesterday, I told everyone I come to know a gentleman, sharp-dressed, best Southern drawl, John Robert Smith, and we hit it off instantly, and he talked about Union Station. And I was just speaking last night with a young man about why it's held here. Well, it's proof of concept, right? What this Union Station has done for this city to grow. And so as I learned about the I-20 passenger rail service, I also started to realize how Monroe had so many relations to Meridian, Mississippi, because we serve a larger population. Monroe is in Northeast Louisiana. We are the education healthcare hub for, I would say, 13, 14 parishes. And for you that's not from Louisiana, that's a county. And so, but we have to govern regionally because that's how our people live. Our labor shed studies show that people go from Arkansas and move to Mississippi. And so with that, we have to govern regionally. We have to think regionally. And then we started learning more about the funding opportunities that were out there. And then so and I learned to grow my vocabulary and I learned to grow my knowledge of this passenger rail service. Trust me, I've sat through more Surface Transportation Board Zoom meetings and I know too much about rail than I thought I should. I was more concerned about sewer and water. But ultimately, I understood what this means to our community, how it connects our research institutions, how it connects us to larger markets to be able to recruit people, because that's how we live today. We're not only recruiting companies, we're recruiting talent and people. And so from a workforce standpoint, from an economic development standpoint, this was great. But ultimately what this comes down to, especially for towns like Monroe, it's an equity piece as well. It's connecting people to healthcare institutions. Take this, my neighbor in the city of Ruston, one of 3 schools for the blind in America. And what a great story that could be to tell, that how Amtrak and the city of Ruston and the School for the Blind there can serve people with certain needs to be able to interface with passenger rail. And so ultimately this is going to take partnerships and collaborations. And I just want to thank you to the Southern Rail Commission. Thank you for your time that you've invested in me, because ultimately that's going to serve my people better. And so I've really enjoyed this time, and I appreciate being here and telling our story.
Know that when there was a regional hearing held in North Louisiana at the request of Senator Cassidy from Louisiana, Senator Cassidy from Louisiana and Senator Hyde Smith from Mississippi came and stayed for 3 hours hearing everything that was presented before them and asking some pretty tough questions of our friends from Amtrak and others that were there. And when you get 2 sitting senators who can sit still and listen to your topic for 3 hours and be personally engaged. That's a strong, strong message. And then, of course, they return to Washington, and they are the advocates you need from a conservative side of the aisle in support of passenger rail. But it's because they heard from mayors like Mayor Ellis about the importance to their people.
So now let's talk a little bit about Greenwood. Boy, I love going to Greenwood. I'd actually hoped to bring my wife with me on this trip, and we were going to make that stop. But we weren't able to make that work this week, but we will be coming back. So, but let's talk a little bit about Greenwood, the station there, the platform, and kind of your vision for what we can be doing there.
Certainly, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's certainly a pleasure to be here in the Queen City. I have not been in Meridian in years, and it looks fantastic. So I've enjoyed my stay. It was great to meet new friends last night and see old ones. So I've really enjoyed my stay here, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I thank the people that the rail passenger and Amtrak for asking me to speak about Greenwood. Greenwood is a very unique city. It's a historic city. It's rural, and the passenger rail is certainly the answer to our city, for sure. For one thing, we really tried hard to buy the depot and from Canadian National, and if we could have been able to have bought that depot, then we could have done some great things there. But fortunately, Amtrak came in and helped us. You have to be a little bit of a pest, right, Todd? And keep on trucking so that you can make things happen. And Amtrak was fabulous to Greenwood. They've been a great partner. The Rail Passenger Association is certainly a great partner to Greenwood too. But the citizens of Greenwood are, we struggle. It's basically a large portion of our city is poverty or at the poverty level and below. So they depend greatly on that train system. They depend greatly on getting on that Amtrak and going to New Orleans, or they're going to Chicago or even Memphis, because a large population of Greenwood does not have the transportation resource. A large part of our city walks. I mean, they can't even get to the hospital. We only have one taxi service. I'm waiting on Uber to come, but it has not come there yet to get people from the train to the downtown and to other parts. But we do have transportation service that provides that, and that's been great. And also having the crew there that works there daily from Amtrak. And they support our hotels, they support our dining restaurants, and it's just been a great thing for Amtrak to be present in Greenwood. And they have been phenomenal, and we support them completely. And as Robert said earlier, Senator Hyde Smith is on board with us, Senator Wicker's on board, Congressman Thompson. So fortunately, in Greenwood, for our delegates in Congress, they all support this rail passenger system, and that's been phenomenal for Greenwood. Yes,
we can put those up, and you want to talk about those a little bit?
I think the first one is going to be the existing railroad back in the 1900s.
That's right.
This railroad was there since 1917, and I can't see what's showing. Yeah, that's the ribbon cutting after Amtrak came in and redid the platform, and they were gracious enough. The bricks that were down there were a hazard for people with handicap issues. It was a hazard of having the old brick there, because eventually, after so many years, they fell, and it just wasn't a good thing. So Amtrak came in there and made the beautiful concrete and made it very accessible to your handicap situations. Also, the ribbon cutting, as you can see, was a success. It was early in the morning, and people still came out to see what Amtrak had done. They took the waiting area there and made it pretty and nice, and with new restrooms and handicap accessible. So it just turned the whole city around there. It's in a great part of town. It's one of our major thoroughfares through the city. It's on Carrollton Avenue, and it connects to both highways 82 and Highway 7. So it's a great service there. So you can see what people appreciated, that Amtrak came in there and redid that depot. And they, like I said, it looks great now. I'm still trying to own that piece of property so that we can do more things. I would like to have our CVB, our tourist department there, and then they could welcome people to the train. And every now and then they'll go out there and offer orange juice to the 9 o'clock boarders. So it's been a great thing for Greenwood. Thank you.
About the future of Greenwood. But now I'm going to ask Meridian to talk about what he sees in the future for Natchez. And we've had a lot of conversations about this. It's really exciting. There's a lot of opportunities. So please welcome Mayor Gibson.
Mind, I'm going to stand because
Please.
I'm blindsided over here. It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Jim. And Mayor, it's so great to be in Meridian and to be here with all of you. I am so glad to finally meet someone that I have heard so much about. Mayor Ellis, you're doing great things, and what a beautiful city you have in Monroe. And y'all, this lady, I've got to just tell you, she just ended a term as the president of our municipal league for the state of Mississippi, and we count her a real Mississippi jewel, and we do. And if you haven't been to Greenwood and you haven't stayed at the Alluvian, you've really missed out, and to be able to go to the Viking cooking school. You know, I'm real proud of our state. Mississippi has hidden jewels all across our state. One of those jewels we call the jewel of the Mississippi is Natchez, and it is the oldest city on the highest bluff of the mightiest river. My wife is actually representing me at some events today because I think we have 8 going on. And she texted me this morning and said, "What is that thing you usually say?" And so there, you just heard it. We are the oldest city, older than New Orleans, founded by the French in 1716. And as Mayor Smith said, we at one time one of the wealthiest cities in America, and we still are home to all of these beautiful mansions, live oaks, Spanish moss, and amazing views of that great Mississippi River. We also are home to an old historic depot that right now we're waiting on bids to come back. Pray they're in budget so that we can renovate that depot as a new visitor center for our city. Just a few miles south of the depot is the old Natchez rail line. It's a line that's been established over 100 years, and that line connects Natchez to Brookhaven, which is on the main track for the city of New Orleans. Now, I want to give you a quick little story, and you mayors will understand this. So I had only been mayor a few months, and my wife and I had been talking about, wow, how fun it is to travel by train, but it's been a while, and let's just drive over to Brookhaven, and let's catch that city of New Orleans, go to New Orleans and have a great time. It's so hard to get away. I literally was having to drive while somebody was trying to talk to me and continue a meeting while I'm driving down the road saying, I'm going to miss the train. And my wife, is one, she's always on time, and I'm not. We got to Brookhaven, and I thought, wow, we made it. We walked around the beautiful old historic depot. We looked in the windows of a museum, and we found it odd that all the doors were locked, though. This was on a Saturday morning. And we saw someone and said, where's the train? Where? Oh, you've got to go to the new depot. And they pointed, and it's one of those moments you hear dramatic music, and there's a new depot, half a mile north, and we're about to miss the train. We put it in gear, we got there, and literally the train never stopped while they threw us and our luggage on the train, and we made it. Well, that is how I feel about the Christie Grant and the historic opportunities that have been shared with us today. I don't want to miss the train. This is a historic time, and Jim, thank you for introducing me to the topic of wow, Chrissy grants and the fact that we have 4 times the money we used to have, approaching $70 billion. I think it's a real good time for small cities that once had passenger rail to get reconnected. We're in a good situation right now in Natchez in that in 2016, the city, and this is thanks to prior leadership, not me, but the city was able to obtain a $10.7 million Tiger grant. The city also then partnered with Natchez Rail. Is Aaron Parsons here? Aaron, I'm looking for Aaron. He was supposed to be here. But Aaron and the team at Natchez Rail, they put in money. We got 10.7 federal money. We got 3.6 Natchez Rail money. And then our governor, who was actually here just yesterday, at the very end of the project, we were short $2 million, and he put that in. We just last year completed a $16 million renovation of the trusses for every bridge connecting Natchez to Brookhaven, about 65 miles of railroad. And we can now, for the first time in a long time, take fully loaded cars from Natchez, our industrial park, and our port to anywhere on the eastern seaboard. Well, that now has opened a new dialogue. My wife and I, since that train we almost missed in New Orleans 3 years ago, we have actually ridden the city of New Orleans 4 times over the last 3 years. We have made that trip from Memphis to New Orleans a couple times, and I just believe that if we could reestablish passenger rail service from our historic city to the Amtrak facility in Brookhaven, or possibly, Todd, you just mentioned an opportunity to go south toward one of our favorite places to go, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. There are tremendous opportunities. I'm here to just connect and to listen and to say Natchez is ripe for opportunity. Last year, we hosted 1.3 million visitors, an annual impact now to our local economy of 100 million. And we have become the most popular destination for about 9 cruise boats. Viking, American Cruise Lines, American Queen go up and down the Mississippi River. But what we're really missing is an experience like none other in our region. The land of live oaks, Spanish moss, amazing valleys, amazing creeks and streams that all end in that majestic bluff overlooking the river. And if you have ever had a chance to drive the rural highway 84 from Brookhaven to Natchez, you will see beautiful landscape, beautiful vistas, and to imagine a rail experience through that topography and how dramatic and beautiful it could be. And that's what we want to see happen one of these days. And it's even more beautiful when you go south to Baton Rouge and get into the Lower River Road region. Thank you so much.
Would not even return a congressman's phone call to inquire about I-20. Would never speak to the Southern Rail Commission. When I was chairman of the board of Amtrak, we were 3 weeks from starting that service from Meridian to Dallas-Fort Worth. Mayor Ken Barr was mayor of Fort Worth. He was going to get on the train in Fort Worth. I'd get on in Meridian. We'd have a ceremony probably at Shreveport, ride our trains back. That's how close we were until the president zeroed out all funding for passenger rail, and all of a sudden we were fighting just to keep what we had alive. Now that CP has acquired what they call the Meridian Speedway, they now have committed to the exploration of running 1 round trip a day in 2 years and 2 round trips a day in 4 years. So you are blessed that you now have a freight railroad that says, yes, this is a customer, additional customer. We'll work with them. Mayor McAdams has another Canadian railroad through her town that's not Canadian Pacific, and is one of the more problematic freight railroads to deal with.
That's a good word.
But the way we got our station, Mayor, is you've got to find the pinch point with the freight railroad. They don't really want the station property. That's just something for them to maintain. What do they want? They probably want a grade crossing or two closed, which we closed 4 crossings and grade separated 2 more. We started with Norfolk Southern saying, no way, never can you have that property. We will not sell it to you for anything less than $1 million over our dead bodies. We closed those 2 grade crossings. They gave us 5 blocks of property. And we were able to move forward on the project. So find the pinch point for Canadian National, because they truly don't want to maintain it. And then the property adjoining, you have ways at the City Hall of enforcing their upkeep of that property, like any other property owner.
I have certainly been trying to find that pinch point. And that, like you said, we've closed several of the crossings. And, you know, I've promised them everything that I possibly could. I would build them a new building, you know, and because all they have there is a few pieces of equipment, but they just do not want to let go of that property. And, you know, I've tried, I've reached out to the CEO, I think he's in Canada. I never heard a response back from him. Senator Wicker was able to get us a room full of them, about 4 or 5 from Canadian National, and they heard my concerns, and they were very receptive, and they were very polite. And then once I left, I had their cards, and I reached out to each one of them. I still did not hear back from them. So I've kind of given up, and then, like I said, Amtrak stepped in and really helped with the situation. So now everyone's satisfied. It looks good, and the waiting area is nice, and so we're not hearing the complaints we had. But we still would like to have a presence there, mainly to bring tourism, so that people would know when they arrived in Greenwood there were things for them to do. We have lots of festivals in Greenwood, and sometimes the people get off of the train, and they see that something's going on downtown, and so they've stayed. We've had several of the people on the train stay a couple of days and enjoyed the festival. We had a group from Oklahoma that were staying there for 2 nights, and they had a blast because we were having our downtown festivals going on. So you do have an opportunity to use that and bring it into your city and make it, you know, a very great tourism destination. But the people have to know that Greenwood has something to offer. So we have some literature now in the waiting area, which has been helpful. But it would be nice if we had presence there, people that could be able to talk to the passengers as they deboard the train. But I will say this, Greenwood's population is about 15,000, and in 2022, we were the 2nd largest passenger ticket fare in the state of Mississippi. So about 9,200 people came to Greenwood from New Orleans. So that's tremendous. That's over half of the population of Greenwood that we have that ticket fare going. So that says that people are interested in Amtrak. They're interested in being on a train where you don't have to buckle up and not be able to get out of your seat until you're told. You can walk around, and if you have the nerve to cross into the next car, I don't. It's kind of scary to me to look down and see that rail. I'm thinking, no, I'm going to stay in this car. But seriously, it has been a godsend for Greenwood, and we're certainly supporters of Amtrak and passenger rail.
Yes. In fact, Mayor, we are pretty excited about the opportunity to work with them going forward in this next grant cycle. You know, communication's everything, and it was kind of odd a couple of weeks ago to get a call from Natchez Rail and say, just wanted to prepare you. I think we're going to have a great announcement. It was then that I found out they had applied for the Chrissy grant. You know, the city of Natchez, we have a former congressman who is our lobbyist. We have successfully brought millions of dollars to our city. We've increased our budget from 29 million to 52 million, all because of the extra federal money we brought in. That's no new taxes. It's just the growth we're having. And I told the guy I said, because I got a call later, well, we didn't get it. And I said, if you had just let us know, we could have helped you get that. And so, you know, Mayor Smith, gosh, and Mayor Ross, where are you? Knox, he just stepped out. We're going to be looking to you for some help, and we really want to get you down to Natchez, because if Gloucester can get this short line rail going, that a $52 million Chrissy grant they just got to restore over 30 miles of track. And, you know, I'm going to just plant this seed. We have a beautiful state lake in our region called Lake Ohissa. Cindy Hyde-Smith really believes in that project, and it is right dab in the middle between Brookhaven and Natchez, and that could yet be another beautiful resort drop-off for passenger rail. There's just so many opportunities, but like I said earlier, if we're not paying attention, we're going to miss the train.
Not quite. There we go. So I'd like to turn to Mayor Ellis, if I could. You know, we've heard about kind of their growth plans. We only heard a little bit about yours. I mean, you and I have talked about this kind of on the sidelines of some of the other meetings, about what this could do for Monroe. Now, we did an economic benefits assessment for you and your team, and we found over $200 million across the entire extension, the entire route that could be generated. So what would that mean for Monroe?
I'm going to take a note from you. Can't see over here. One statement I want to make to you is something that I've come to find out. Bureaucracy is the laziest form of injustice to a city. Okay? It keeps good projects, and when I say that, I say go home, because if it's not reflected in your mayor's budget, if it's not reflected in your county's budget, because ultimately I have to think about my members in Congress. They run every 2 years, and it's true. We need to be able to provide things on a local level, on the localized level, that puts up projects. When they come in your town, they need to see you turning dirt. They need to understand that this is a piece to the overall puzzle, but you as a municipal leader have to provide the box top. You have to show visitors in your city what you're growing towards. And so for us, it started, we're a historic city along the riverfront. We are home to Delta Airlines. It was originated there. We were the first to mass bottle Coca-Cola. We have built Titans. We have one of the top communications companies that started out as a switchboard in somebody's living room. And now they're one of the most renowned global telecommunication companies in the world. So we have a large entrepreneurial spirit. But it started with us with a strategic downtown master plan, and it built out from there. What do people see when they walk in? And I love the fact that you say the living room of your community. We wanted to create an experience when somebody stepped off. That's where John, Robert, and I, we love the sights, sounds, the smells, the experiences of each single town that you walk into, right? So we wanted to create an experience, because ultimately, as you've heard from these two mayors here, we all have a story to tell, and it's a beautiful story. It's a story about the Mississippi Delta. It's a story about the blues. It's the story about art. It's the story about poetry. It's everything that we come to love, and that originated here. And just like you, mayors, we have bled for so long to larger, as I call NFL markets, because of opportunity. Well, this is our opportunity to bring them back home. This is our opportunity to connect them to the world. And it's important because ultimately what we're talking about, and I go back down, it's about people. And people make economics, right? So ultimately, one thing I want you to walk away with and understand is this. We have to have it reflected in our local budgets, all the way down from the state, all the way down to your towns and cities. Because when people come in, they have to know that this initial investment doesn't stop. This isn't a plan that sits on a shelf somewhere. And when they come in town, you need to show anybody why you're special, and to have storytellers like this to talk about why it's important to your community, because ultimately they need to see that these dollars are going to be put to work and not sit on a shelf. And when I talk about bureaucracy, it talks about me as a mayor, and that we have to be ready for these and position our budgets, our times, and our talents to be ready for these historic investments that are going to come down. And so it will be an economic boost. I can present a lot of things as mayor, but this is the only program. This is one of the only things that I've yet to get pushback for. You saw when Amtrak came through and to talk about the Fed-State partnership application, it was so much excitement. There were hundreds of people there just anticipating and listening and hoping and praying that there was good news about this, because it is a wonderful project. And so it is supported. And again, it's so much opportunity for our community, and I'm proud to play a small part in it and to grow Monroe through that.
So I guess my follow-up to that would be, as you try to advance these projects, what is your message to my advocates?
Yeah, it's I wish everybody showed up like this for a city council, right? Some people don't want anybody to show, but no, I'm serious. And you being a part is number one. And you're all passionate. I can know each of my conversations I've had with you last night and how passionate you are. It's about support and letters of support. It is about picking the phone up, and it goes a step further. It's about going and setting appointments and talking about why it's important. It's one thing to write a letter. It's another thing to show up and to say, this is who we are. So build your coalitions. Sit there at city council. Sit there at the Capitol. Turn in your green card to comment about why it's important. We're going through a governor's race right now. And I've picked up the phone and I've asked them, each candidate, about where they stand on passenger rail, and tell them the importance it is for the city of Monroe. Because this is what I understand. When I understood about this, we understood that every single one of these stations had to come through one of our towns. And that's when I went over across state lines. Let this sink in. We had to get an AG opinion on whether or not we can enter into a cooperative endeavor with another city from another state. It was the first time that that's happened, or that they could find case on. They've never found precedent on that. Now, they have between states, but never between municipalities across state lines. And the power of that in this application shows that we're not thinking just about our city. We're thinking about an entire state, northern part of a state, and two-state region, because our people live that way, and we're serving how our people live. And so just don't keep it within you. Your sphere of influence grows beyond your city. So get multiple cities to come in. Get multiple cities to attend your council meetings to understand, because we all have to govern that way. We all at times feel like we have to punch above our weight class, but when you've got an army of people with you, it makes it so much easier. So advocate. Advocate.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We do for you.
Well, I'm going to continue to work with Canadian National. I'm not going to give up, and I can tell from these two mayors, they're not going to give up, so they're going to get what they need to. That's what it takes: determination, commitment, and the passion for your community. So I want to keep it there, and since 1955, Amtrak's been there, and it's grown and gotten stronger and better. And that's what we're going to strive for. We're going to keep it there. We're going to keep it stronger and better. The ones that have closed, I will say this, some of the railroads east and west of Greenwood did close. They dedicated that rail to the city of Greenwood, and we did a great thing with it through Mississippi Department of Transportation. We were able to get almost $3 million in grant funding, so we did a linear park, and we call it the Rail Spike Park, and it's a walking path or a jogging path. You just can't put an electric or any kind of vehicle on it, but it goes from the highway, from downtown all the way to Highway 82. So it's 1.7 miles, and if you go both ways, it's 3.4 miles. And I walk there once a month because I keep up with what's happening on that rail. On that track, just to make sure everything's maintained. So I walk every morning. So I have 3 or 4 routes so that I can. It's great to walk in your city. You see a lot things that need to be done when you're walking instead of driving. So I make that part of my routine every morning. So it's great to see people walking on that path that once was a railroad. Even though we really needed the railroad to stay there, it just didn't make it. So you can make good things out of the closing of a railroad, but we don't want to ever see Amtrak go away from Greenwood because, like I said, we are huge supporters of Amtrak and passenger rail.
Well, I'll just say keep doing what you're doing, and because it definitely is persistence. And I also live by the old adage, and my mother taught me straight out of the Bible: "You have not, for you ask not." And it's amazing what happens when you are willing to make the ask. But this is what I see on the horizon. We really are seeing a new generation coming on and coming on strong. And I enjoyed, speaking to some of that younger generation here just last night, Andrew, Danny from Colorado, and others. I know a lot of 20, 30-year-olds who really aren't into cars. In fact, my stepdaughter, who lives in Austin, has a car that she hardly ever drives. Because they just love the vibe of a town. They love the vibe of walking, of going to the events, going to the brewery, doing their thing. And they also love the idea of hopping on a train and going somewhere. And if we can get more connectivity through this passenger rail expansion, which is historic now in our country, and I'm so excited about it, we're going to see the smaller cities like Monroe, Greenwood, and Natchez have more and more opportunity. National Public Radio recently named us the most affordable city in America. We were the first city in the whole southern region to start a remote worker incentive campaign where we've been paying remote workers to move to our city. And then, we've received a lot of these designations, great place to, raise a family, great historic city, most scenic city, most safest city to visit during a pandemic. We got that from Forbes back in 2021. But what I could see, and walkable cities are such a thing now. And so what I could really see from all of this in the future is the ability to bring back small town America in such a great new way, because the younger generation, they want to be able to work, live, play, and still be connected to the larger cities that they may not necessarily want to live in, but visit more and more. So thanks for the work you're doing. It's truly going to make, and is making, a historic impact on our country. Thank you.
And Mayor, I want to pick up on the point you made about the younger generation. So in this country, there are 2 massive generations that control all marketing and advertising in the country. There's the baby boom generation, which was the largest generation in the history of the country. There are fewer of us every day, unfortunately. And the millennial generation has now eclipsed us. They are the largest generation, and they're thinking differently than we did. My generation acquired things. Millennials acquire experiences. 28% of them don't even have a driver's license. And any of you in this room approaching anywhere near my age can't imagine not having a driver's license when you were 15 years old. But that's because you use that automobile to pick up your friends. And if I had my phone, that's their Chevy. They pick up 1,000 friends in a click. So they're living in downtowns, they're walking in downtowns, they're biking in downtowns, but they do want to be connected to the larger region, and more they're choosing passenger rail where it exists to make that connection. And we did a report at Transportation for America where there were 500 large industries and corporations that moved into downtowns in a 5-year period. We called the site selectors and the presidents and asked them why. And they said, very simple reason, we're hiring the next generation of employees and they will not work remotely. They want to be in downtown, so we're moving downtown. And that includes little Conway, Arkansas. 3 tech firms moved there because it's got a downtown with a sense of pop and it has a connectivity, unfortunately, with passenger rail. But that's what they're looking for, and you're right to play to that future growth.
So I just, I was actually going to wrap friends from Amtrak here, but before I do that, I did actually want to, something occurred to me. One of the things that we do, as I said, we visit with our mayors wherever we are, and it sounds like one of the things that you were successful with Mayor Ellis was having those mayors kind of work together. So even if we're not in that town, we can ask our mayors to talk to other mayors. Can you maybe expand on that a little bit?
Well, it goes back to we have to think larger than ourselves. I knew leadership across I-20 and where Amtrak had showed interest in having a depot. Poor Mayor Arsenault, he was, 3 days in office, and here I am I'm on the horn telling him he's got to, hey, look, you got to put up money, you got to pass through council, we're getting ready to roll. And so I knew that we had to come together because our voice is stronger. Like we talked about, it's one thing to have one mayor show up and knock on the door, but when you see 4 mayors and broad support, I appreciate John Robert and everyone for our time on the Hill. I mean, we entertained conversations with members from Texas and in Mississippi that would usually not take an appointment with people from Louisiana, but it's through their efforts for years that have brought them as trusted members of people that helped us open that conversation. And so it makes it a lot easier when you have support from members from all across I-20, mayors all across I-20, state delegation across I-20. It's reflected in your local budgets. It's reflected in your state budget. It makes it so much easier. And so what I would say is I would encourage your leaders to have a bigger conversation. Create a compact, because you're so much powerful in numbers, and especially when you all can make it a priority. When your state delegation is appropriating and you have 15 members to come up and say, it's important to us, well, therefore you make it a lot easier for the governor or DOTD to make that decision. And so, yes, that's one thing I think has made this successful, and it resonated with a lot of people, and it's refreshing to see mayors and elected officials working together on something for once, that you see this type of support. So it is important. We have to stop thinking about just our city and start thinking about it won't work without any other city along there. So go out, garner that support, and help those who are in that arena. Did that answer your question? Okay, good.
I guess where I'd like to really have the sort of final portion of this conversation, our friends from Amtrak are in the room, Federal Railroad Administration is here in the room. What I have here is 3 communities on the stage talking about what their aspirations are, what their objectives are, how things could be better in their communities. And we've talked a little bit about what we can do as advocates to help advance that vision, but I wonder if this is a good time for you to tell the Federal Railroad Administration and Amtrak in this room, what do you need from them? What do you want from them? What can we do to make this vision, either I-20 or the Greenwood station or Natchez? What can we do together, and what do you need from them to make that happen?
Yeah, so we want you to know that we're here. We have done everything that we can to align our budgets. It's not just a station, it's ADA accessibility around it. You see dirt turning right now for us to prepare for investments and future investments. The excitement is palpable. Everyone is truly hopeful that for once we have an opportunity, we have the funding. That's always the key piece, right? That had to be in place. But the political will, the will of the people, the excitement, the support is there from us, even on the local level, that we've aligned budget and we've dedicated, and we've got a bucket just set aside for this type of investment, because ultimately our people support this, we support this, and we're here to support you in any other way. So just know that, like with anybody, you have full access to our staff, our teams. We've even contracted out to build capacity for this with firms who have engineering firms who have the capacity to help out on this, and I think they're wonderful partners. John, Robert, and them do some work with them as well, because we knew we didn't have the expertise, but we did have it in our budget to be able to put a master services contract together with a firm who's qualified to be able to help stand that up and help us as a city prepare for this investment. So, and all of the mayors are paying into this, and so again, that's why we felt it was so important to garner all mayors speaking in line, all towns and cities, speaking with one voice and putting our money where our mouth is to say we're ready for the support and we're ready to stand up any investment that you see possible. So again, I know everybody's asking for things for you, but the thing you need to know is that we stand ready to serve, and we stand ready to be a part of this. So.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity again to be here with you guys today, but also I want to say thank you to the Rail Passenger Association and to Amtrak for always keeping the lines of communication open. And that's what it takes, being able to talk it over, being able to help. Like Amtrak came in and helped us because they knew that we were desperate trying to get something done at that station. And so they came in, they listened. And that's what it takes, is listening. And sometimes it does take numbers. So we mayors do kind of pile together sometimes and make those numbers happen so that people listen to us in a stronger way when you've got several mayors on the team. And so these mayors are great. Their cities are great. I have not been to Monroe in a while, but I can't wait to be there. Since I've met Mayor Ellis, and he's a strong personality, so he's going to get things done. And Dan over here is phenomenal. If you have not been to Natchez, you need to go, because he has exceeded all expectations of what we thought Natchez was going to be. Really and truly, it is fantastic. He has done an amazing job. And very rarely can you say you've been mayor of two cities. I mean, who in the heck? I mean, it's hard enough to do it one time. Who wants to go from one city to the next and be mayor? So that is a great attribute. So thank you again, and thank you for all the help, and we're still going to be calling you. So like I said, are we supporters of Amtrak and Rail Passenger? You bet we are.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. We a while back appointed a mayor's mental health task force, and I think that was, mainly to help me. I mean, who wants to be mayor of two cities? Sometimes I tell that task force, I said, can y'all just come on in my office? I've got a couch, might need to. It's not easy being in this business and waking up every day. And I tell people, if you're going to be in public service, you better be ready to help people all the time and listen to them all the time. If you're not willing to do that, you're in the wrong business. And I'm just grateful, and I know I'm here with kindred spirits. Just grateful to be able to get up every day and make a difference. And that's why I do what I do. And I do want to say this to the National Railroad Administration. I remember as a, I guess, 20-something-year-old, getting Carmichael, who was from here in Meridian and quite a trailblazer, and having a visit with him in Washington when he was administrator there under the Bush administration. And he shared with me his joy in taking the train from D.C. to Meridian and back every time he came home. And he believed in passenger rail so much, and he would be so excited to see the historic opportunity. And so what I would say is just keep doing what you're doing. It was great to have Administrator Bose here, and to understand that they know this is a historic moment for them to make an impact across this country that has never been made before and might never be made again. These are historic times. And so I'm just excited, and thank you to the, FRA for what you're doing. I also want to say this to Amtrak. Todd, you're back there. Where are you? It was good to see Todd Stennis. Yeah, every time I talk about them, they leave. I don't know what that is, but this is what I want to say, though, to Amtrak is sell the experience. Sell the experience. Also in my 20s, I've had a remarkable life, and I think back, I got an opportunity to go to Europe and to get a Eurail pass and to just ride the Eurail. And I'll never forget a 2-hour trip from Budapest to Vienna, and I shared a Eurail car with a concert pianist who was on her way to interview with the conductor of the Vienna Symphony Orchestra because she was about to perform a concert there. And we talked about her experiences of as a young girl attending a concert and having a crush on John Kennedy in England, and as a young woman getting to see Rachmaninoff play the piano for one of his very last times. I will never forget that experience. I will never forget the experience of sharing a lunch with someone that I'd never met and never will see again. But while we just shared a beautiful dining table somewhere on that Eurail experience, the snow-capped Alps, in the distance. Amtrak, you can sell an experience way better than any other mode of transportation. The airplane is really not an experience. I mean, it gets us there and it gets us back. And the bus ride, that's not the experience. Although the ironic thing is, I had to take the bus, the final leg, to get to an airport convention 2 months ago because they didn't have any airplanes to service us at Atlantic City. But I will say, Amtrak, sell the experience and continue working on the experience. That's why my wife and I have ridden the Spirit of New Orleans 4 times in the last 3 years, to be able to sit there, to have great service and great views of this beautiful country. It is second to none other. Thank you so much.
Are we on? There we go. So we now have some time for questions. I know that from FRA had wanted to respond to a little bit of something that Mayor Ellis said, and then we'll take questions from the floor. I'm going to ask you, when you ask your questions, please come up to this mic so we have a nice orderly line. And when you do that, speak into the microphone. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, because we have people online who cannot hear you when you do that. So.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you very much for those comments. And it's really, I joined FRA in February, and I have to tell you, it's probably the most exciting job I've ever had is to be working on this long distance study. I just turned 65, and I told them I'm going to give you at least 5 years. I'm not going to retire. I'm going to see this through. But I wanted to I wanted to respond in a really boring way. You have to understand how FRA needs to work. You know, people like me, I worked at the Minnesota Department of Transportation before I came over to FRA, and I still live in Minneapolis. As ambitious as someone like I am to try to move projects forward, there's the way that government has to work, and like I said, this is going to be boring advice, but the way, you know, when Administrator Bowes talks about $66 billion, it's our job to give it away, but it's your job to ask for it. And we have programs like Corridor ID and Fed State. You are putting together the projects. We are not. Yes, I am working on a long distance plan, but when we put out a notice of funding availability, it's very generic. We say, you know, here are the requirements, but we have to look at the projects that are submitted. And one very important thing, one of the very frustrating things that I've been going through, without giving you details, is that not everybody who submits a proposal follows the directions. And it is so frustrating to know that this is the project that we wanted to fund, but something went wrong. They didn't hit the send button. They thought they had submitted it. They didn't hit the send button. So please, and when I was at MnDOT, I actually would hire a consultant to do this work. And when I was a consultant, that's one of the things that I did, was fill out these applications, because you got to get them right. I can't emphasize that enough, that if we get a proposal that misses something, we can't deal with it. But the other thing is, I was talking to somebody earlier who was showing me, you know, their notebook of support letters. That is very, very important to us, seeing those support letters, understanding that everyone along a corridor is in favor of something. That's very important to us. So look at the criteria very carefully. If you're before the NOFA comes out, talk to us. We can't talk to you after it comes out. That is a very invaluable experience. If you know that there's going to be a program coming out with money and you're not really sure how it's going to look, talk to us ahead of time so that you know what you're, and then listen to our advice. And if there's something missing in your proposal, or if there's something that's a little weak, work on that. Anyway, that's my advice, for what it's worth.
I'm glad you said that. As you know, I'm an old Marine, and I didn't know I couldn't submit credit. Sorry, we'll change that next time. No, I'm glad you said that, because it's very good. This is where I really appreciate the Southern Rail Commission and all of you here, because you are an interface with these agencies a lot, and also you've been able to help us as communities be able to build our capacity, be able to be ready for that next round of funding. And when we don't get it, they give us the insight. Entities here that you go back home, they really do give us the insight to say, hey, this is where I think you were weak, and here's where I think you can improve that next round of funding. So we really do appreciate advocacy groups that are out there that help us as mayors. Like I said, we worry about water and sewer. Help us understand rail, and feedback that we get from your folks representing you at FRA and Amtrak. They are godsends for us as administrations to to that feedback. It's reflected in your next round.
And Frank, I think you would agree with this. The criteria are critical to follow when you're submitting. The engineering data is important as backup, but you got to tell your story. They read hundreds of these things. You need to capture their attention in the first page. Who are the people you're serving? You know, with this administration in particular, it's about underserved communities. It's about historically disadvantaged communities. It's about equity, inclusion. And if you have a rail story around passenger rail, you can tell that story. Ruston, School for the Blind, an opportunity for this whole country to learn about how people with vision impairment can access, in this case, public transportation that is rail. It's a learning experience from Amtrak, or for Amtrak. So tell your story. Is that, you got to make them feel something. You got to make them want to read the rest of that stuff.
Agreed. All right, so we're ready for a few questions before the session ends.
Sure, Paul Nelson. Can you all hear me without the mic, or do you need the mic? You like the mic? All right. So first off, thank you for Mayor Smith and Mayor Ross and SRC for all that you've done for our region. I'm from Oxford, Mississippi, so I very much appreciate what y'all have done in a sustained leadership way. And it's a pleasure to hear more mayors joining the fight, so thank you, mayors. For Jim and the RPA, I really appreciate what y'all have done down here too, because you've provided the spark at key times that have helped move the project forward with SRC. So thank you very much for being here. I also appreciate y'all mentioning Mr. Gil Carmichael's name. I know we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, and he truly is one, and just an incredible, decent human being. And I know, Mayor Smith, you've often said that our job is to run our leg of the race to a vision that we may never see. It may be our children or our grandchildren. And so that sustained vision I very much appreciate, and what I'm hearing from the mayors today. All of us in the room like trains, but what I've heard from the mayors is you love what trains can do for your community. You love what trains can do for your region as a competitive, connected community and region. So that turns my aperture from being a rail advocate to a community and regional advocate. That's a much different thing. I like trains, but I want my community and my region to be what you've described. One of the things that each of you have mentioned is the importance of funding and incrementalism towards that broader vision. And so your advice, I know Mayor Smith, you talked about just a small seed grant to study the economic investment that puts you on the steps to where we are here with $500 million invested just surrounding that station. So could you speak to us as rail advocates who really need to be community and regional advocates? How do we influence our local government so that instead of arguing for I just want more trains, I can argue for very specific line items to help you in the budget to move forward? What do I need to do at my local level to help you achieve that vision?
Well, I can tell you that it helped whenever my council was on board as well. So it first started with, if you're a supporter of that, talk with your council member or whoever that is to get their support. Because ultimately, with a council of 5, I got to know how to count to 3, right? And so ultimately, what we need you to do is, again, find your coalitions of people, find your major employer there, and let them tell research institutions, your universities that serve a broader region, and it helps you paint that picture more. Regional labor studies will help prove your point as well. Anything that you can get, your metropolitan planning organizations need to be on board as well. Got a text that we're passing through Washita Council of Governments, the language in there for passenger rail. So anything that touches transportation, it has to be in your master transportation plans, it has to be in your council, it has to be in your capital budgets. But ultimately, you as a citizen, I work for you. That seat I sit in don't belong to me. Ultimately, you tell us what to do. John Robert, you guys been a council meeting. You get 5 people against something, you're going to have one council member flip. So you get 15, 20 people at a council meeting to talk about the importance of passenger rail, unprecedented levels of funding that are out there right now, and as I love to say, don't let this train pass you by because it's there. But find your regional institutions that serve a broader purpose, bring them to the table and say, we need your support and letters of support, and show up council meetings to be reflected in the budget. And then get your chambers of commerce and y'all go down and talk to the governor. It's very powerful when that happens.
Yeah.
Next question.
Thank you. Ms. Semper Fi.
Hey, I'm Virgil Payne. I'm an engineer here in Mississippi, worked for the DOT, industries, railroad at one point, different things. So my question's about the financial reality of this, right? So there are a lot of grants out right now, and that's very helpful. And I know there are also some questions of kind of what happens after the grant, right? You've got a limited time period as between either your council elections, your mayorships, whatever not. And, you know, I'm reflecting on the fact that in the mid-'80s, I kind of remember the interstate highway system was tearing up, and there was this program put in called 4R, and it was interstate maintenance. And the concept was the federal government was coming in on the operational side, right, in a way, because when you just gave those capital grants out, there wasn't really that follow-up to kind of preserve this asset to keep it running. Even still, you think about the interstate highway system now, like Social Security disability basically covers the financial cost of a big accident. It's a federal, you know, thing, right? So I guess I wanted to kind of ask your perspective on how this looks as a mayor when you're trying to address these costs later on, and as you structure this project, and what you might want to see in future legislation as we move towards a reauthorization in another 2-3 years. Thank you.
You know, it's interesting that you asked that. We had that very issue in Natchez and working with Natchez Rail in 2016 to pursue the Tiger Grant at that time. Because if the rail company was to somehow become insolvent or leave, then the city as applicant for the grant would have to maintain that rail
We have a road project that started out 30 years ago as a $17 million project. 30 years later, it cost the taxpayer $180 million. You want to know why? Your local government wasn't, as the job grew, wasn't putting enough local match to support the state from coming in and finishing the project. So when I tell you bureaucracy, that means your own local government being able to keep up with it, because, you know, again, you made a great point. You don't want to earn a reputation that when you have historic funding and you do happen to win one of these grants or funding opportunities, that you can't deliver on that project. So again, I'm glad you made that point, is that we as communities have to prove performance and prove that we're ready to stand up historic funding to deliver projects. And so it has to be reflected. It has to be, we have to perform. Because these are historic levels of investment. It's up to us to perform. So that is a great point. Thank you for making that.
Okay, so we are actually out of time. We're going to make a break. John Robert, did you want to add any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Sure, just the simple takeaway from this morning's session is you see 3 champions up there. Where you have them in your hometown, support them. Those half dozen negative voices that show up at every council meeting, you can outnumber them. And you need to show up at those council meetings. You need to take those council members. My first 4 years, I had 3 council members that if I said it was morning, they voted against the sun coming up. Your presence in the council chamber can change that. And if you don't have a champion, create one yourself. Because those champions change voices on Capitol Hill. And it's the small cities of this country that ultimately save passenger rail and have year after year after year.
And this is why I was so thrilled. Years ago, and I continue to get it repeated to me over and over. Mayor Ellis, Chairman McAdams, Mayor Gibson, and all the other mayors around the country that I talk with and work with. I hope you all have gotten something out of this. I certainly have. This is